Fellas, it is running backs to target and avoid part 2. We have athletic testing. We have official measurements. We have speed scores, RAS numbers, new draft capital estimations for all these running back prospects. So let's get into it. Quick disclaimer. Before I get into anything, you guys probably know what's coming here. We're going to be talking about the prospect model. Going to be talking about a lot of what just happened this weekend at the NFL Scouting Combine. I'll be doing running backs today. I will be doing wide receivers tomorrow. Make sure to watch part 1 of this video so you're not confused on how the prospect model works and all the hit rates for everything that I'm talking about. I'm not going to go over it again because I obviously went over it in that video. But what we're going to do is basically talk about how these guys went up or down in the prospect model based on those combine performances that we saw this weekend. And for full rationale, again, I will link that video down below. So structure of this video will be this. We're going to talk about the big risers, guys who jumped into new tiers, went up a lot of percentage points. Small risers, basically they checked the box at the combine, went up a little bit. Of course, the fallers, there was a couple people that did go down in their FSC prospect model grade. And then we'll talk about the guys who didn't test, incomplete, kind of what we expect from them going forward. So 5 biggest risers in the FSC prospect model grade from the NFL Scouting Combine. Bhayshul Tuten. We were here, fellas. We were here. What did I put out a video a week ago? And I said, this dude is going to absolutely smash the NFL Scouting Combine. And he went up in his prospect model grade more than any running back in this entire class. He went up 7% in his grade, and he is now into the running back 1 upside tier. The hit rates for the tiers, you guys can see them on the screen. Again, I broke that down in the other video. But Bhayshul Tuten goes out there, comes in a little bit smaller than his listed Senior Bowl weight. He was 5'9" or 5'8 3/4, 211 pounds at the Senior Bowl, comes in 5'9" and some change, 206. So again, not like perfect size profile, but given his skill set, he is definitely a great size profile for that. 40.5-inch vertical, that was the best among running backs. 10.10 broad, I believe that was second best among running backs. And then he runs the fastest 40, 4.32, with an unofficial 1.52 10-yard split. His miles per hour, I believe, was damn near 23 on his runs as well. So he showcased his speed in the field drills. He was able to showcase what he was able to do there. I talked about it on tape in that video last week where I said he was the biggest sleeper running back prospect in the class. Well, people aren't asleep anymore. They're going to know exactly who this guy is, and it is great news because, to be honest with you, this isn't going to change his grade at all. I want to make sure that I'm clear here. The Combine, I expected him to do this. This is not something that I thought, came at a left field or whatever. I expected him to blow up the Combine. I talked about him having potential 4.2 speed in that video last week. The reason this is good for Bhayshul Tuten is because before, mock drafts had him ranked in like the 5th round or the 6th round or whatever, and now he's firmly ranked in the prospect model at least around day 2 guys. J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson. I think you're going to really start seeing him in the 2nd round, in the 3rd round of NFL mock drafts, and that's great news because at the running back position, we just want opportunity, and once you get said opportunity, I think Tuten can do everything that he is capable of doing with it. And again, if you want more information on him, did a whole video on him last week. Quinshon Judkins was the 2nd biggest riser at the NFL Scouting Combine. Full disclosure here, I don't know if I could have gotten more of my guys to perform at the Combine, but it is awesome to see, because I loved a lot of the dudes that had great weekends. Quinshon Judkins goes up 4.5% in his FSC prospect model grade into the meat of the RB1 upside tier. He stays within the same tier that he was before, but he is now ranked as the RB3 in the class. Only Omarion Hampton, who was ahead of him before, and only Jeanty ahead of him. He did leapfrog his teammate Travion Henderson, who was previously ahead of him, and he was right around Caleb Johnson as well. 5'11", 221, and he jumps 38.5 inches in the vertical, 11 in the broad, which I believe was the most or the biggest number among running backs. And he ran a 4.48 too. This is a complete athlete, folks. We knew this about Quinshon Judkins on tape. Those of us that did the research there, I was really high on Judkins' athletic ability. Again, of course, it's great to see him actually put it together. For a 9.88 RAS score, I would have been happy with anywhere between an 8.5 and a 9 for Quinshon. So he actually even exceeded my expectations a little bit. He is now going from a guy that we're like, oh, maybe he's like a Cam Akers or, J.K. Dobbins level prospect. Man, he's firmly in Nick Chubb, Kenneth Walker, Rashad Penny territory. And if you guys recall, we got some first-round picks or some borderline first-round picks in the actual NFL draft here. And I do think given the resurgence of the running back position around the NFL, there's a chance Quinshon goes in round 1 now. I think the Chargers will be interested. The Vikings will be interested. The Steelers will be interested. There's going to be teams that potentially take this guy with a first day of the NFL draft pick. especially when you check boxes like that. You dominated for 2 big schools. You're a national champion. You got the size. You got the speed. Every box is now checked for Quinshon. Outside of maybe some third down ability, there's not many questions you could possibly have about him. He was my RB2 heading into the combine. He is still my RB2. I won't be changing his grade really at all because I had him ranked pretty highly for athleticism already. So Omarion Hampton, third biggest riser, at least the third biggest riser among the top guys. He is up 3%, and the reason he is definitely interesting because he went up 3% is because he's in the workhorse tier now, which is really encouraging because, as you guys recall, workhorse prospects have a pretty high hit rate, and Omarion Hampton going out there at basically the same size as Quinshon Judkins, 5'11", 221, jumping 38 in the vertical, 10'10" in the broad, 4'46" officially, speed as well. He jumps from a guy that we're talking about, the ones that I just talked about with Judkins, which is Kenneth Walker and Nick Chubb and those type of guys. We're talking about Omarion Hampton in the stratosphere of Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Leonard Fournette, and Ezekiel Elliott. I think it's all but a guarantee, to be honest, that he'll be a first-round pick because JT should have been, Leonard Fournette was, Ezekiel Elliott was, Joe Mixon would have been if he didn't have the off-field stuff coming out of Oklahoma. So I think Omarion Hampton, we got some reports saying that he might be above Ashton Jeanty on some teams' boards, and I think there's definitely some credence to that. So Omarion Hampton, definitely a great combine yesterday. A couple other lower-level guys that definitely I want to give them some love because their grades did go up quite a bit. Tahj Brooks of Texas Tech, who I actually roster in one of our Devy leagues, grade is up 4.5%. He went up a tier as well from the waiver wire tier to the flex place tier, which is a big-time jump in terms of hit rate. The reason I think Tahj Brooks is a big riser, at least in the minds of probably a lot of NFL teams and myself included, is because I really expected this dude to run like 4.64, and he ran a 4.52 in the 40-yard dash, came in at 2.14, which is probably a little bit lower than his playing weight, so he ran a little bit faster as a result. But his agility scores were absolutely elite, which I didn't expect to happen, and he also had pretty good jumps as well. So Tahj Brooks maybe went from a guy who could have not gotten drafted, potentially, guy who would have went 6th, 7th round. Maybe he's a 4th-round pick now, so definitely keep that in mind. He's ranked around the likes of like Isaiah Davis, Keontae Ingram, Will Shipley in the prospect model. RJ Harvey from UCF, also a guy who jumped up a little bit in the prospect model grade into the RB2 upside tier. So he went from a flex play guy into the RB2 upside tier, which is where kind of Tuten was before he ended up jumping up there. Central Florida's RJ Harvey has a 9.07 RAS score. He's a little undersized, obviously 5'8", 205 pounds, but great jumps, great speed, ran a 4.41 officially. His best comps now, because of the tier that he's in versus the one that he was in before, Kerryon Johnson, James Cook, Ronald Jones, these are guys that were drafted on day 2 of the NFL draft. We'll have to see what happens with RJ Harvey, and you can see he's ranked among these guys even despite not having projected day 2 capital. His projected draft capital there by NFL mock draft database is 137th overall, and yet the model says, which draft capital is an input for, that he's as good of a prospect as these guys or as good of a bet as these guys are. So it is really encouraging for RJ Harvey knowing that if he does go day 3, he'll be one of the biggest smash sleepers that you'll ever see, given the prospect profile that he has. So to me, those were the 5 biggest winners, at least in terms of their grades. There was definitely more guys that improved their grades, sneaky winners, guys who helped themselves. DJ Giddens being one of them. His grade went up 2%. Didn't really change his comps. He had Miles Sanders, Royce Freeman, Ronald Jones before that. But having a 6-foot, 212 frame, that's what he was listed at, 38.5-inch or 39.5-inch vertical. Also had a broad jump, very strong as well, 4.43 40-yard dash. Very good testing for DJ Giddens, so he helped himself for sure. Damian Martinez, very similar to Tahj Brooks, was definitely at risk of running like a 4.64. He ran a 4.58 on his first attempt and ran a 4.51 on his second attempt, so that probably helps out his grade as well. I think from an athletic standpoint, you go from being like a James Conner or a Brian Robinson type of athlete to now people might be looking at him more as the type of athlete that can be a Chris Carson or a Zach Charbonnet or something like that. His prospect model comps did change a little bit down to like a Brian Robinson, Roshan Johnson type. So feel pretty good about Damian Martinez. He's a guy that could sneak into the 3rd round, probably more likely a 4th round pick, but I do really like the film and I think he has a role in an NFL backfield. Trevor Etienne, his grade went up 4%, but it's mainly because he went from a 6th round pick last time I did the draft capital projections to now he is being ranked in the 4th or the 5th round. So he definitely has a little bit of an upside case now, knowing that he has a good receiving skill set. He ran fast, 4.42, jumped pretty well. Trevor Etienne, of course, the younger brother of Travis Etienne from Georgia there. So he had a pretty good day. Donovan Edwards, same thing. Not a very good prospect. I mean, he's in the waiver wire tier, but had an excellent athletic testing day there. 9.6 RAS score, good jumps, great speed, everything that you kind of want there. But he did come in at 205, which is not really the greatest size profile. Now let's get into the guys that lost some points in the model, because there was some guys that didn't really have the greatest day, or for one reason or another, they dropped in the model. So this might shock some people, but Raheim Sanders dropped in the model. And it's not because he didn't really have that good of an athletic testing day, because he had a 9.82 RAS score, which is awesome. He ran a 4.47 or 4.46 officially, and that's great. But his grade before was based on the fact that he would run a 4.46, which is what he ran. So he met expectations. He didn't go above or below. His nickname was Rocket. I didn't think he was going to be slow at the NFL Combine. But he came in 13 pounds lighter. He was listed 230 running a 4.46, which is obviously a much higher speed score than 217 running a 4.46. And he also had his draft capital drop a little bit in the 3 weeks since I did this first exercise. Now, of course, because he had a good combine, very possible that he was projected pick 112 the first time I did it. He's projected pick 157 now. Because of the good combine, maybe he gets back into that third, fourth round conversation. And as you can see, his comps right now, Trey Sermon, Brian Robinson, Marshawn Lloyd, those were all guys drafted in the third round while he's being projected in the fifth round. So he is a better prospect than these guys at face value. But draft capital could be a concern a little bit for Raheim Sanders. Good thing he tested well. Definitely great news there, but we'll have to wait and see where he gets drafted, because the NFL mock community isn't very high on Raheim Sanders, but it is good to know that his testing went well. Hopefully medical reports went well, because that's another big piece of the combine, that specifically for Sanders, who had shoulder surgery, knee surgery, all that kind of stuff. He needs those medicals to go well for him, but that's good news that he tested well. So again, he's technically a faller, but I wouldn't really consider him that, because the biggest piece of that was draft capital, although he did come in under what he was listed as. So Ollie Gordon, running back from Oklahoma State, I would say is probably just, when you think about it logically, is probably just one of the biggest fallers of the NFL scouting combine in the offseason process so far. He was listed 233 at the Senior Bowl, so that's what I inputted him as at the first initial run through of the prospect model in the part one of this video. He comes in 226, so that hurt him a little bit, and he also ran a 4.61, which was the second lowest time among all running backs. I'm worried for the draft capital here. That is the big problem I have with Ollie Gordon, because when I first watched him, I was like, oh, people are sleeping, man. 2023 Ollie Gordon, this guy was a second-round running back. He'll get into the draft process, he'll wow people, and he'll be back into the good graces of everybody. Then we went to the Senior Bowl. We were starting to hear some things about the off-field concerns and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, let's just get third-round draft capital for Ollie Gordon, and we'll be good. He'll be a good option in the second round of rookie drafts. Now, after running a 4.61, I'm worried that this dude is going to be a fourth or a fifth or maybe even worse, sixth or a seventh round pick, just because he also potentially has off the field attitude, DUI kind of concerns. So with Ollie Gordon, I would say he's got to be one of the biggest losers of the NFL scouting combine, because while his profile without the input of draft capital is pretty good, because it relies a lot on best season numbers and career numbers and stuff, I'm worried this guy's going to be a fifth, sixth, seventh round pick, just like we saw from Zach Evans a couple of years ago. Sean Tucker a couple of years ago went undrafted because of a medical concern. Sometimes these good prospects on paper don't get the draft capital that we want them to for one reason or another, and I would be worried about Ollie Gordon. And I specifically, as an Ollie Gordon Devy manager, am worried about Ollie Gordon. So Jordan James, also another guy that probably fell in the eyes of NFL scouts. It's so hard when everybody's blowing up the combine at your position and you have a middling 4.55, you're undersized, you don't really have that great of a receiving skill set. His draft capital in the second run through dropped about 60 picks as well. He was expected to be like a fourth round pick, now more so a fifth or a sixth round pick. So he definitely dropped in his grade. And then there were some guys that didn't really help, nor did they hurt themselves. So this is kind of the tough thing with the combine. Not everybody is a winner or a loser. Sometimes people just kind of did what they were expected to do. And that's what I would consider these guys to be. All three of these guys went up a percentage point, but that's only because they hit the 7.5 relative athletic score accelerator or disqualifier that you need to hit to get an extra point in the model. So TreVeyon Henderson came in a little bit less than than he was listed at. I think he was listed 210, comes in at 202, so that's why I kind of hurt him a little bit. He was expected to run fast and jump high, and he did. So I don't really give him any bonus points for that. I knew TreVeyon Henderson was fast. I knew he could jump well, so that's exactly what he did. And he actually probably should have ran even potentially into the 4.3s, and he didn't. His higher or lower on Underdog was set at 4.40, and he ran a 4.43. So again, Henderson didn't help, didn't hurt himself. He's still going to be probably a top 50 to 64 pick, and he's still going to help an NFL team, but I don't think he improved or hurt his draft capital this weekend. Caleb Johnson, same thing. I think people are going to overreact to the 4.57 that Caleb Johnson ran, but if you watched him on film, we knew this, guys. We knew he wasn't fast. I know there were some people, there was like a closet group of Caleb Johnson stands that were like, he's going to surprise people, man. He's going to run in the 4.4s. And I know Underdog had him listed at 4.57 or 4.47, sorry. I took the slower on that because I was like, I don't think he's that fast. And he ran a 4.57, which is precisely what I had him pegged at. I had him 4.58 in our draft guide. But he has good size. He looked good in the field drills. He had someone list that he jumped like an 11-foot broad, and then it got taken down and delisted. So I'm not exactly sure if he ended up doing the jumping drills. But regardless, he's not a speed back. His game is not speed. It doesn't shock me that he ran a 4.57. And same goes for Devin Neal, who ran a 4.58. I knew he wasn't fast coming in. So I'm not going to ding my grade on him because I already factored it in. I'm not going to increase my grade on him for jumping well because that's kind of what I thought. He's quicker than fast. He doesn't have long speed, but he has a pretty good 10-yard split, pretty good 0 to 10 kind of speed. That's what I'm expecting out of Devin Neal. So didn't hurt himself, didn't help himself. And then the four guys that we can't really talk about much because they didn't really do a whole lot at the combine, although I will kind of do my best to talk about what they did do, is Jeanty from Boise State, Cam Skattebo from Arizona State, Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, and LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. Now, obviously, Jeanty's the RB1 in this class, and an important disclaimer really quick. When you guys see these RAS scores for Jeanty, Skattebo, Sampson, and LaQuint Allen, I'm using their projected 40 times from NFL Draft Buzz to build these RAS scores because they didn't officially run, because we did get actual weights, actual heights, actual measurements. Some of these guys did other drills, but they didn't run their 40. So we can't get their RAS score officially until they probably run their 40s at their pro day. People might be wondering, Jeanty, can he still get into generational? The answer is it's going to be harder now because he weighed in at 211, not 215. And 215 is actually a benchmark where you lose some grade. So him weighing in at 211 means that before he had to crack like a 7.5 RAS to get into the generational tier, just like I said with Tet McMillan at wide receiver. But now he needs a 9.4 RAS score if he's going to be under 215 at his pro day. So basically what he's going to need to do is go out there, run like a 4.40, 40-inch vertical, close to an 11-foot broad. Like he's going to need to blow it up to be a 9.4 RAS athlete to get into that generational tier. Again, it's possible too that Jeanty doesn't do anything at his pro day because he's already guaranteed to be a top 10 pick. It's really not going to hurt his NFL draft stock to do nothing, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens, but it's probably unlikely at this point, unless he really blows it up, that he is going to get into the generational tier because he came in under 215 pounds. Same goes for Cam Skattebo. He actually technically lost a little bit of grade, but it's only because his projected 40 time puts him under a 7.5 RAS score because he's projected, according to NFL Draft Buzz, to run a 4.62. And I think that's probably about what he'll run, given the fact that he did all the other drills and didn't run the 40. It's probably because he knows he's not very fast, but he did jump absolutely elite 39.5-inch vert, 10.3 broad. That's great. He just didn't run, and he's probably not very fast. And we're going to get word most likely at his pro day that he ran like a 4.57, but that's actually probably like the 4.62 he would have run at the combine. So again, Cam Skattebo, his grade was always going to be a little inflated pre-combine because his athleticism was the thing we were worried about, and him not testing and not running the 40 kind of proves that we were maybe right to have that concern. So he went from the RB3 in this class in the prospect model. Remember, he was the big surprise behind Omarion Hampton. He drops below Quinshon Judkins, below TreVeyon Henderson, and below Caleb Johnson if he were to get second-round draft capital to the RB6 in this class, which is probably more apropos given the profile that he actually has. Dylan Sampson also didn't test in the 40, which kind of sucks because he is projected to run a 4.35. Again, if he does in fact run that fast, he has a chance to get over a 7.5 RAS, but is looking unlikely because his size is not good. 5'8", 200 pounds. Only threw up 13 reps at 225 in the bench. He doesn't have a good size grade, which is going to hurt his overall profile and what teams think of him, how many touches they're willing to give him. but I do think he's still probably going to go in the 3rd or the 4th round of the draft. So he's still an interesting player, but I do think his profile got hurt by the fact that he didn't run yet, and also, too, he could potentially be undersized in the eyes of some teams. And then LaQuint Allen, once he runs, he's probably going to have a lot of suitors because he has a good receiving profile. He has good size. He also ran a 4.45 projected according to NFL Draft Buzz. So once he actually runs at Syracuse's pro day, if he does, he is probably going to be a riser in the eyes of some people. So that's the running back class in a nutshell from the combine. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. I kind of went through like rapid fire, brief takeaways kind of for each player, who went up in the prospect model, who went down in the prospect model. Again, more prospect model stuff. Check out the last video. Check out the wide receivers to target and avoid part 1. I'm going to do wide receivers to target and avoid part 2 tomorrow, going over exactly how I just did here, what happened in the wide receiver class versus the running back class. I'm going to probably record it right now. You guys might be wondering too, why am I in my regular background? I said I was going to Mexico. Well, my flight got fucking canceled this morning. So right now I'm waiting for my flight tomorrow morning. I'm going to be flying out really early tomorrow. And I'll mention the wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end stuff in tomorrow's video. But as of now, I'm kind of just killing time to wait to go to a very warm and tropical place. So leave me a like down below if you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Anything rookie, prospect, dynasty related, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Annual subscribers with Mother Flocker tier selected and promo code FSE will get a free voucher to use for a team review and a buy-sell hold report. For those of you guys that want personal advice specific to your leagues, you can check that out. All of the prospect model stuff, trade value charts, dynasty rookie rankings, dynasty rookie draft guide, everything is over on Flock Fantasy as well. So make sure to check out everything we got going on over there. And with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.